Welcome back to Sports Cards 101, Tips and Tricks for Collectors. Today we are talking Michael Jordan, the GOAT. We're talking Michael Jordan 1986 Fleer rookie cards. And for you purists, I know you're saying no, his real rookie is 84 star. That's okay. Everyone in the hobby calls this a rookie card, so we're calling it a rookie card today. So today we're talking about counterfeits and authentic Jordans. 86 Fleer Jordans is one of the most recognized, iconic cards in the history of the hobby. It is also one of the most counterfeited cards. We see probably every week or two, someone either sends in a fake Jordan or brings one in the store. Sometimes we have multiples in the same week. And thankfully, best I can recall, I don't think a single counterfeit has gotten past us over the last year. We've seen a lot of different varieties of them. We're going to talk about two different ones today and how we can help educate you to save money on not buying a fake Jordan, not getting burned. And of course, the safest way if you're buying a Jordan is to buy one that's already graded. But we're going to show one off that we just got back from PSA. But we're going to talk about some of the things to look for. Again, first of all, I've got in my hand a PSA 7 that we recently got back from PSA. Check out the front and the back on it. Pretty nice example of a Jordan rookie. Now, I've also got two different counterfeits that were recently brought in. And to the naked eye, they're very clean cards as well. However, once we look at them under magnification, you see a number of differences. The first thing I can tell you is if someone brings in an 86 Fleer Jordan to you, if you've got a shop, if you're at a show and somebody offers to sell one to you, the very first thing to look for is the centering. Most of the time, if you're offered a perfectly centered one, that's an immediate red flag because there are very few perfectly centered ones out there. Now, I've actually got counterfeits with me today that are both off-center. So there's plenty of counterfeits that are off-center as well. But I've seen a lot of, the first thing when somebody brings in a perfect Jordan, they say this one's pristine, mint condition, perfectly centered, then I know to be very wary of that one because there are very few perfect ones out there. The first thing we do after that, if someone brings one in and we're inspecting it, is the field test. Because if you're familiar with 86 Fleer Jordans, or if you're familiar with the 86 set in general, you'll know that the back has a little bit rougher finish than the front will. And so if you feel the card and the front and the back, as on this counterfeit, the front and the back have the exact same finish, something's wrong. I call these laminate counterfeits. They feel almost laminated. They've just got this waxy, plasticky feel to them, if that's a word, but they're not real. So first thing is the field test. Sometimes, or I should say, second thing. First thing is the visual test. If it's perfectly centered, you need to be wary. Second is the field test. If the front and the back feel exactly the same cardstock, that's a counterfeit. Next, you go to the visual test. There's a number of things to look for. I usually start with the very smallest thing on the card, which is on the back. You've got the little basketball logo on the back. First thing to have with you, if you have an 86 Fleer Common, it's great if you put both the Common and the Jordan that's in question, if you put them both under 10x magnification, which is the same thing graders use, and you look at certain features of the card, if it is a counterfeit, you're going to notice a number of differences. So we start, again, the little basketball in the corner. Now, if you have a authentic 86 Fleer Jordan, and you've got a nice loop, 10x loop, and you look at that basketball in the back, you'll see a tiny bit of separation. You'll see a very light seam, just like it's a basketball. It's not huge, but it is there. It's very distinct. It's noticeable. So when you grab almost any counterfeit and you look, that ball looks blurry. The lines are indistinct instead of being distinct. So that's one of the very first telltale signs. Also, the lettering around the basketball. On the authentic, it clearly reads National Basketball Players Association, and then it says NBA players in the ball. On the counterfeit, it says blah, 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 something. You can see the NBA in the ball, but you cannot see right below it where it says players. It's NBA, and then it's just a blob. And the letters around it, you can trick your brain into reading it, but if you didn't know what it was supposed to say, you're not going to really be able to tell. So there's the first thing, and that's on the back of the card. You can then move over to the left side of the back of the card and look at the officially licensed product, where it says NBA officially licensed product on the back. And there's an R registered trademark. It's clear and distinct on the original authentic, officially licensed NBA product. And the R is you know for sure that it's an R with a circle around it. If you look at it on a fake, you can normally read the officially licensed part, but the R is typically going to be very blurry. All right, you've also got the dot matrix pattern is different. On an authentic, the red dot matrix pattern on the back is very consistent, and you can read, you take the pink part on the back, the solid pink, and it will be consistent throughout. When you look at one that is a counterfeit, you will see, in this example, you see lots of black dots intermixed with the red that actually run off of the red border at the bottom. So very different. One of the next things is the Fleer Premier logo on the front. Again, we start with the original. Fleer Premier logo, very clear. You can read Premier very clearly, and the Fleer crown logo above it is very distinct and sharp. You move on to a counterfeit, and you see all kind of black dots in the background. Again, you've got it. This is a grader's tool. You've got to get one of these if you're wanting to figure out counterfeits and figure out alterations. This is I've talked about this in another video, very affordable tool, very handy. You see so many differences. Again, you may not have a graded Jordan with you to compare, but if you have a common Kevin Willis, or a Ralph Sampson, they're not counterfeiting those. So get you any of the other, say the 120 commons in the set. There's a few other good rookies, but get you one of those commons, carry it with you when you go to a card show. Carry a loop, carry a common, compare all the logos. There's also differentiation in the border. There's color differences here. They're clear and distinct on the real card. They often bleed into each other on counterfeits. The lettering at the bottom of the card is different. This one is very sharp. Michael Jordan, Bulls, guard, forward. Very sharp lettering with great distinction between the blue background. On the fake, you see tiny black dots running all through that lettering. It's not sharp, it's not clear, it's very muddled. You also see those same dots running throughout the yellow border around the card. So I will do close-ups for you, and we'll show some images of this. We'll put it under a lighted loop so that you can get close-ups. But again, there are a number of things to look for. Something else to look at. Classic Bulls jersey on Jordan where it says Chicago. Very clear, you can read every letter on a real one. You grab a counterfeit, it can be very blurry. It just looks very different. It pops. You're like, oh, that's Chicago. On a counterfeit, you're like, yeah, I think that's Chicago. And so that one can be tougher, because even this one you can read it, but it's definitely much blurrier. Even the outline on his jersey, the 23, very clear on the real one, very blurry on the fake one. Now, these two fakes I have with me, again, they were submitted at different times. We caught them. They didn't get submitted. They're slightly different. Centering is a little bit different. I'll put them side by side, but one is much brighter than the other. One has much better color. Even the backs are very different. As I was talking about the backs, one of these has one of them is a little bit closer. The pink is a little closer to a real one. One, it's almost more mauve than pink. And so the numbering on the back is different. But I can go on and on. There's different things to look at. For those who are more interested, we're going to share a link to a great article from Cardboard Connection where they point out some of these things as well as others, because if you're buying a high dollar Jordan, you've got to be very careful. You do not want to be spending thousands of dollars. But while I'm talking on a counterfeit, while I'm talking about Jordan rookies and grading, I want to share something else you need to be careful of. Many Jordan rookies, even the authentic ones, over the years were put in the nice thick 1-inch screw downs. As a kid, I thought they were so cool. I've got this 1-inch screw down to show my card off, because you could literally, stand it on end. And if anybody bothers you at a card show, you can whack them with it. There's so many things you can do with a 1-inch screw down. However, the problem with them is when you screwed them down way too tight, the corners get overpressed and the corners are pushed down more than the rest of the card. So what does that give the appearance to a grading company? You send that card in. I've had countless customers come in and say, yeah, I've had my Jordan rookie in a screw down for 30 years. And they're so proud of it. Like, man, nothing's going to happen to it. I've had it this nice thick screw down. So awful things could have happened to it. I literally sat in my store unscrewing one of these one time. And because I guess it had been humid, or I don't know what moisture had been in the air, literally when the top plastic came off, it tore part of the card. Literally, as you separate the two pieces of plastic, it pulled the finish off of the card. So that can be bad. That can ruin the card, obviously. But the other thing is, even if it's still clean when you pull it out, if it has been pressed down too tightly, then grading companies, specifically PSA, will look at that as an alteration to the card, because the card stock has been compromised, and a lot of unscrupulous dealers will press cards in screw downs like that to flatten out a corner, to make a corner look sharper. Now, when you were a 12-year-old kid and put that Jordan in a screw down, that wasn't your plan. You had no thought, grading didn't exist then, right? However, you've got to be aware of that. And the reason I share that is it's not cheap to grade a Jordan rookie with PSA. I have often had customers say, well, I want to try this somewhere else first, where maybe it's more affordable, just to make sure it passes, and not for authenticity's sake, but for condition's sake, in case the card's ever been in a screw down. Because I can tell you from our experience, my opinion, PSA is the strictest about pressed corners. We have seen this. We've had customers bring in Jordans in the past. We had multiple customers who got one back from PSA that they said was altered, and then they would try it with an alternate company. And because they said, we haven't altered this, we just had it in a screw down for years. They tried it with another company and it would pass and it would get graded. So, and another thing is, obviously with PSA, typically you're going to pay for the express level to grade a Jordan if it's a nice looking Jordan. So you're going to spend hundreds of dollars. And we recently had a customer send one in. He said, no, it's got to go PSA, it's got to go PSA. So we sent it express level for him. And he's out hundreds of dollars because it came back altered, because apparently it had been in a screw down for years. Somehow it had been pressed. It wasn't. There's a difference in alteration, a pressed card and a colored card or a trimmed card. I'm not talking about someone who took a blade to the card to try to make it look sharper. And I'm not talking about someone who took a red Sharpie to the border to make it look better. Those are different types of alterations. That's recoloring, trimming. This is simply pressing a card. And I was speaking with a friend in the comic industry, and we said how different it is, because if you send comic books into CGC, they will press them for you before they grade them. And we were saying how different that is from the card industry, where pressing is a no-no, but in the comic industry, it's recommended. So, but in the card industry, if a card has been pressed, if it's been in a screw down and flattened out, that is considered alteration. So you've got to be very careful, and you've got to know if you have one of these that's been in a screw down, or if you buy a raw one, you need to ask, hey, by the way, has this happened to have been in a screw down for a long time? Or if you see a raw one that's in that state, know that it may not pass grading, and you could spend hundreds of dollars with PSA. It may not pass at any company, depending on how severely it's been pressed down. So understand it may be slabbed as authentic, but it's not going to necessarily get a numerical grade. So those are just a few minor details about Jordan rookies. Understand, when you want the real thing and you don't want to worry about it, go out and buy one that's already graded. PSA, BGS, SGC, CSG, all of them are legit companies that we recommend. We work with all four of them. If they've graded it as authentic, it's going to be an authentic Jordan. So the other thing you do have to be aware of, there are even counterfeit slabs on the market. So you've got to know what you're looking at with the slabs too. There are unscrupulous dealers who have counterfeited PSA slabs, which is one of the reasons PSA is constantly updating their anti-counterfeit technology. I was just at a meeting with them discussing some of those measures. So even when they're in a slab, you better check the slab out too. It's sad what goes on in the industry when people are crooked and trying to take advantage of unsuspecting buyers. So again, we will share some close-ups with you so that you can see some of these things we were sharing, because there are many things to look for when you're buying a Jordan. So I hope this has been helpful to you. We will be back with more education, Sports Cards 101 with Joe. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.